just going to do a quick intro on Entre if this is anyone's first time. My name is Michael. I'm the founder of Entre. We're a social network for the future of work. So we do a bunch of these events to bring top venture capitalists, CEOs, founders in and help really just bring the whole startup and entrepreneur community together. And let me see if this will pull up real quick. And you guys should be able to see my screen here. So just to fill you in a little bit on everything that we're doing. Let me see, there we go. Okay. So this is generally our fundamental thesis in what we're doing. So with everything going on, even before COVID, we strongly believe that a lot of the economy and workforce is changing much more towards the future of work. So we are focused on being the hub for entrepreneurs, startups, but also freelancers, gig workers, and small and online business owners, because we believe they all need each other. And the 9-to-5 traditional corporate professional lifestyle is dying. So we built our app over the last couple of years as we've been building the community through events. You can create content, you can launch products, you can ask questions, you can start interesting conversations with just other like-minded people. And the other really exciting thing that we have is our search, which you can in one click filter by whoever it is that you're looking for. So if you're looking for an investor in AI, you can simply click those things and you can find all the people who you're looking for in basically 2 or 3 clicks. We want to make it super simple, super streamlined, and just easy to find who and what you're looking for as an entrepreneur and just get connected. So besides that, you can find your team, find jobs. We have access to a bunch of partnerships and deals that you can get for being part of our network with Dropbox, G Suite, TopTal, all sorts of discounts that you can get as well. And then it's on a little bit of a delay here. We have a bunch of cool upcoming events as well. A lot of these are with founders, investors over the next couple of weeks that a lot of these are free and you can just sign up on our site or join entre.eventbrite.com. And then if there's anything that we can do to help you guys, just reach out to us. You can sign up for free, join entre.com. You can hold up your phone, camera, scan the QR code to download the app. It's basically early access right now. We're going to do a more public launch, but there's still a couple thousand people on there already. And if you want a free ticket to any of our upcoming events, just shoot us a text and feel free to shoot us an email too. That support email goes to mine. So if there's anything that we can do to help you, or if you have questions for me about anything, just let me know. And that should do it. Everyone should be able to see me again. It looks like we've had some more people come through, and I'd love to kick things off now and introduce the panelists and our speakers tonight. We'll do ladies first. So I'd love to have Kate from Lately introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your story and everything that you have going on.
Don't call me a lady. I'm just kidding. Hi, everybody. Welcome. And I'm Cail from Lately. So quick about me. Lately uses AI to instantly transform podcasts, videos, blogs, chapters of books, anything like that into dozens and dozens of pre-vetted social posts that it knows your audience is going to react to and engage with. So it's pretty powerful stuff. But in another life, I was a rock and roll DJ. My last gig was broadcasting to 20 million listeners a day for XM satellite radio. Lots of cool stories there. We should have beers. I'm old, I'm 46, so like classic rock was my genre, you know, none of this EDM stuff. I don't know what that even is. But yeah, and then somehow I owned a marketing agency and I got Walmart 130% ROI year over year for 3 years with spreadsheets, yay, which is how Lately was born. And Sparrow is a customer of ours, believe it or not, which is super cool. So great to meet all of you, and I'm so pleased to be among some fine shoulders. Thank you.
Amazing. Yeah. And we're super thrilled to have you on board as well. Shripriya, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your background in Sparrow and everything?
Sure. I'm Shripriya Mahesh. We are lately customers, which I was going to mention, and I don't think 46 is old, but that's a different conversation I can have privately with Kate. So I've been in Silicon Valley since '99, primarily in operating roles, product marketing. I ran global product at eBay for a number of years and really watched the incredible growth and was excited to participate in it. I came back to operating when I helped Pierre Mediar launch First Look Media, and I've been institutionally investing for the past 5 years. Between my coming and going from tech or going and coming, I actually went to graduate film school at NYU and had a great experience doing that. And I'm excited to be here today.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think you're going to bring a really interesting perspective to the panel being on the investing side. So we'll definitely have some questions that we'll line up for you on that front for sure, that will hopefully bring some really cool insights on that side of things rather than just on like starting and building companies. But we're excited to have you. I think this is going to be great. Matt, let's have you introduce yourself and your company. And I know you're calling in from across the globe, so fill people in on your background, and excited to have you here as well.
Sure thing. Hey guys, my name's Matt. I'm the Papa Bear at a company called Bonjour. So we do personalized video messaging. We are a layer that plugs into your intercoms, Salesforces, yada yada. And at certain points in the customer journey, we get team members to send personalized videos. Find it converts much higher. We launched about 3 years ago. I was running an agency here and based out of Sydney, although I'm British originally. And we used to send videos to leads that came in because being in Australia, everyone's asleep when they sign up. So we would do that every morning. I used to take a ferry to work, and we tripled our response rates on those videos. One of those customers asked if they could use the system. We put them on board. They started using it. One of their customers asked if they could use it, etc. And 3 years later, we have 70,000 users, mostly outside of Australia. So we're based here, but none of our customers are here. Team is around the world. So UK, Philippines, South Africa, US, and here. I'm actually a designer background, so industrial design and engineering, so probably not the typical founder. But yeah, that's it, I guess.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Matt. And let's we can top things off here with Dennis from Zirtue.
Yep, thanks, Michael. Appreciate it. Dennis Cail, co-founder, CEO at Zirtue. Zirtue is the first relationship-based application that simplifies loans between friends and family, and we automate the repayment process. And so we also give our users the option to pay their creditors directly through the application, which is where our SaaS portion of the application comes into play. I actually came up with the idea for Zirtue probably about 8 years ago now, 9 years, when my sister and other family members would borrow money from me, and I had very limited success in getting that money back. So the thought process behind Zirtue is there has to be a way to help take the awkwardness out of the process for me as the friend or family loaning the money, and help make that person more accountable as well. So that's the entire premise behind Zirtue, and if we can leverage that to add a little corporate value in the process, that's just, even sweeter. I started my career in the Navy as a systems engineer, setting up ship-to-shore, ship-to-ship communications, working with routers, transmitters, receivers, couplers, essentially using software to tell hardware what to do, top secret clearance, all that fun stuff, and then went off to get my undergrad in computer science and my MBA in finance. I worked for IBM for a few years in their corporate development group before leaving to start my own boutique M&A advisory firm, and had a nice exit from that. So I've been a recovering entrepreneur for the last few years. My co-founder and I, Michael C., and I decided to launch Zirtue a couple of years ago. We went live in the app stores last year, and we've been growing about 60% month over month year to date. So pretty excited to be here on the panel with such a great group of people. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you too. And I love the phrase recovering entrepreneur. It's I like to call it more of an addiction than anything. I think it's one of those things, once you taste entrepreneurship, it's hard to stop, drinking the Kool-Aid, if you will. But I'd love to just kick things off. And the first kind of question or topic we have here is, why SaaS? So I'm whoever wants to go first, but why did you get into SaaS? What attracted you about, you could just say software or about this industry? And I know some of you have kind of, you're also involved with other, industries within it, but in particular, what drove you to getting into SaaS and software from the beginning?
I'm happy to kick it off. I think software, if you like building products, software's great. I came from building offline products to online products. It's the same process, so it's just a piece of shift. But in terms of subscription models, honestly, running an agency as well, it is far more predictable. It is a much, once you get it going in terms of business model, in terms of predicting your revenue, growing your team, working out what you can do and where you can go, I'd just say it's a lot easier. Having that predictability is everything. It's quite exciting as well, I think, working through a funnel. So, different to an agency where it's kind of set. It's not so much, it's kind of sales projects, large projects, small numbers of clients to go into where you have thousands of users, and you start to, data starts to have a massive impact on that. And you're trying to improve conversions. And every single step of the funnel gets quite exciting. I think if you like solving problems, that's an awesome place to be. That's kind of my input on it as a start. Over to you guys.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Matt said, I think, there's so many things that are attractive about SaaS, but I think everything really starts and ends with the user experience, right? And all the other stuff is just kind of the details that go into that. But you think about SaaS from just the onboarding process alone, or just the setup process, compare that to an on-premise world that we used to live in not so long ago. It's just a much better value proposition, I think. And then you bump that up against the opportunity for the monthly recurring revenue, the MRR. It just makes a lot of business sense if you're looking at your business model. And I think I'd be hard pressed to start any company these days without thinking about some sort of SaaS-based solution that I could offer for the problem that I'm looking to solve. So.
Anybody else want to add anything?
I think you're on mute, Kate.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, for me, it was accidental, 100%. So let's be honest. I don't know any entrepreneur who starts out being like, I'm going to start with SaaS. Right? You fall into the idea, and then SaaS becomes the most obvious lane to drive in. Yeah. I'm not alone in admitting that. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, from an investor perspective, it's a business model, right? It's a business model, it's a deployment model. So we always look at a company and say, what problem is it solving? And then how you solve that problem is the next step. And I just think SaaS is a great business model, right? It's easy to deploy. If the product's good, you have negative churn. Once you get to self-serve, things get super interesting. And so, from a business model perspective, the valuations keep going up. It's one of those it's a good place to be versus trying to sell direct to consumer, or, as Dennis said, like on-prem. It's just easy. It's sensible. I think for things that sell to companies, it just makes a ton of sense.
100%. Would you say it's your favorite business as an investor? Would you put it up there as your favorite business model? And it's one of the things, I love the subscription cash flow generating businesses. So I always try to look at things on how can we either build a massive subscription business, or how can we build a SaaS business where everything's, it's cash flow, it's very predictable. Would you put that, is that why you're so interested in investing in SaaS? Do you think it's one of, if not the best business model for
it's a great business model. It's not appropriate for every company, right? But if it's appropriate for a company, it's a fantastic business model to use. It becomes predictable, like if you have a good product, it's a very predictable business model. You know, if you get people in, here's what's going to happen. Here's how we can look forward in the future. Here's where we can expand. It's predictable. There's a playbook. There are several playbooks that you can follow to scale and acquire customers, land and expand. All of those things there's playbooks for all of that, right? And so we have great companies across the board, but when I see a SaaS company come in, my eyes do light up, because I'm like, okay, I know how to figure this one out quickly.
One thing that's cool too on that note that we've discovered is that SaaS model does make detecting patterns more obvious. And so we just live and die by patterns. Like I'm constantly looking for the patterns, good patterns, bad patterns, patterns with pricing, with customers, with usage, constant. And so I think that SaaS lends itself to that in particular, and what makes those playbooks so accessible, right?
Sorry, I was muted. I love all of this. I think it's fantastic. I think that was a good place to start. Now I'd love to get into how did you, for the founders, how did you guys actually start your businesses? Because we have a lot of early stage founders on here, people who are either looking to start businesses or at the point where they're trying to figure out how to scale and become, at the point that you guys are at now. So I'd love for you to all, quickly share, maybe your founding story, or what was the, how you guys actually got, going, and how you started the inception story and everything, and how you kind of became what you did now. And Nick, sorry, all the questions are towards the end, and so we don't do any questions throughout.
Actually, it's not a question. I was going to volunteer for anyhow. I was going to start that.
Okay. Well, we don't. we only let the panelists start, so we'll have to hold that to the end. But and then for Shripriya, can you tell us how you started your fund too, because that's super fascinating as well, and how you got into investment. So I don't know, maybe Matt or Dennis, you guys want to start with your founding story and how you guys actually started your company?
Yeah, I think everything starts with an idea, and I don't think there are any shortages of ideas. There is very much a shortage of people who are capable of executing on those ideas. And that, you can put a lot of things into that. But I think, you start with the idea, then you go vet the idea. You try to talk yourself in and out of it. You ask yourself the same questions that Shripriya and other investors are going to ask you, that are going to be hard questions that if you haven't thought about, you're going to have a longer road, right? And so what I did, was really just kind of take a step back and say, okay, is this just a good idea, or is it an actual business? And the way you go about that is just ask yourself, what is the market that I'm going after, right? So with Zirtue, for example, one of the first things that I learned when we started doing some research, and at least according to the Federal Reserve Bank, friends and family lend and borrow almost $200 billion a year with each other, okay? So that tells us a few things. That tells us that Americans help each other in times of needs, including pandemics. But it also says that Zirtue is not a platform trying to convince people they should be lending and borrowing money with each other. Clearly, they're already doing that. It's just, until now, they haven't had the infrastructure or the platform to service out those credit-based loans from friends and family in a formalized way with a digital promissory note payment schedule, all that fun stuff. And we automatically draft the borrower's bank account each month to repay the friend or family member. So for us, it's about the feature and functionality, bumping that up against the market. Is there a large enough market to support what we're doing? And what other strategies can we put in place to scale this business? It's one thing to be first to market, totally different concept to be first to scale. So we're focusing on the user first, and everything else, like I said, is just the details behind that. So I would start with that, you know, validate your market, figure out if there's a opportunity for you to grow the business, if it's big enough for investors to become interested in, and then figure out how you're going to build it. And if you're not a technical founder, go find one, you know. But definitely, I would encourage everyone to have a co-founder, because you need those checks and balances, and you need to make sure that your blind spots are protected. So that's all.
Yeah, that's great. So we yeah, I wouldn't say as was as planned or as well thought through, because we already ran the agency. Let's say we kind of stumbled onto ads. However, what I would say is that we were in the video tech space anyway. So one thing there is that we understood the industry pretty well. So when we saw the signs, I wouldn't say we were exactly taking a punt, because we kind of understood what was going on. So again, like those of you building businesses in the industry that you've worked in for a while, like have more confidence in your kind of gut feel, I guess. And to be honest, I'd say anyone, you know, if that's a choice, or always build something in the industry that you understand or align with that. We also, you know, like we started our company over beers in the pub on a weekend and spent a weekend building a prototype that we could put people on, as I'm sure many people start. That prototype was awful. It was ugly. It kind of half worked. It really wasn't built with users in mind. But the fact that we put a paywall on it, and the fact that people started paying us, it was like $15 a month for this terrible product, and they started getting on, and then other people started asking us if they come in and use it as well. That has a huge relevance. I think if you can get $1 off a customer on day one, get $1 before you've even built the thing, that will give you a lot of confidence in going ahead. And if someone will pay for something that is terrible, then you know that they'll pay for it when it's what it is you want to be. So that's always steps of confidence, you know. And then we kind of put a team behind it. We went all in, and being based in Australia, you know, fundraising here is probably slightly different. It's probably slightly less riskier. So we kind of built it to a user base before we went and raised funds. So we proved that, and obviously de-risked that for the market as well. But I'd say just take small steps. You know, the number one thing is get some money in, and then if other customers start to give you money and you're not even properly started, it's a pretty good indication you've got something.
So the question is how we got started. Are you guys ready? Because this is a good story. And ladies especially, like, lean on in. So I think if you didn't catch it in the beginning, I used to be a rock and roll DJ. So one thing about the radio industry is it's a boys club. Sexual harassment is part of the culture. It's so much part of the culture that I didn't even know it was weird, right? I just didn't know that it was not normal, which that tells you something, right? But what was weird to me was that my ideas weren't being validated or listened to. And so my body got really sick. I started just reacting. I was getting stressed and like reacting, and I had some really terrible ailments, and I wasn't listening. So this is something that's really important as an entrepreneur, just to listen. It took me a long time to figure out how to like hear that my gut was screaming at me. And now I know it's the first thing that I always go to. And it's why investors invested in me, right, as opposed to someone else, because when you're just starting out, you're the business, nothing else matters. It's really only you. And so when I finally started listening, I moved to another boys club because that's what I knew. And there I was, this music industry, like same shit was happening to me, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was a terrible employee, and I was a terrible person, really. I was just toxic. I cried all the time. I hated my job, and all I was talking about was how much I hated my job. And so I read one of the worst self-help books you can buy called The Secret. Anybody read that? Don't bother. I'll tell you the secret right now, which is if you're constantly thinking that you're a piece of shit all the time, you are a piece of shit all the time, right? And so this is what I was projecting into the universe. And it occurred to me that like, if I was playing softball and I hit a line drive, at that moment, I was thinking I rule. I wasn't thinking I suck. And so like, there must be some validity to this. And then my dad had enough. I was like such a crying mess. He lovingly shook me by the shoulders one day and said, you don't have to work for other people, and there's no shame in that. And that's what I felt. I felt that shame, right? And this is, I find, like, sorry guys, I love you too, but I find this is a very typical women response, which is the first thing you do is analyze all the ways you're wrong, that you're fucking up, that you're disappointing other people. And then maybe eventually it occurs to you that it's actually them and not you. And that's what I was going through. And so my dad gave me this total aha. And he was like, I was like, oh yeah, my dad owns his own business. My mom does, the guy down the street does, like, people do this. Okay, I can do this. And my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, is so thoughtful and kind. And he went right out and he got me to the store, because that's what you did then. He got me Guy Kawasaki's Art of the Start, right? Everybody knows that book. And if you read that book, you don't need to read very far, because about the first or second chapter, it says, don't make a plan, just get started. So I was like, well, I don't need this book. So I stopped reading it. And the next day I went to lunch with a couple of angel investors that I didn't know. Thanks, Barack. And I didn't know who they were. I didn't know anything. They were just coming to do some work for me. And I was myself. I was pontificating about all the things I thought should be different about the music industry. And they were like, we love you. Let's start a company. Here's $50,000, right? And I came home and my husband was like, what? I just gave you that book. Like, what happened? And so this is a long story. Rock and roll DJ, it doesn't shut up, but it's worth it. So, because this is how it goes, right? It's not a straight line until you're looking back at it, right? So here I was, I started a company with them. It was a music company. We had a widget, remember widgets? It was like a new song and an old song paired together. And then that I was marketing that, and I was doing well marketing it, and somebody else came along and said, hey, you're really good at marketing. Would you like to consult us? We'll pay you a lot more money. You don't have to listen to bad music anymore. And I was like, yes, that sounds awesome. And they put me on the Walmart account. So that's how suddenly I had a marketing agency. And this project, I got Walmart that 130% ROI year over year. And then somebody else came along and said, hey, we can automate this into software. And, that's how Lately was born eventually. Yeah. So long story.
Amazing story. No, that was
Thanks.
Phenomenal. And that's why I love that question too, because it's like you get a great perspective on everything. And I think you brought up a fantastic point, which is why I wanted to jump in here before we hear Supriya's story, is because I don't think it's so important that as a founder, you get your mindset and all of that right before, and you're in line with what you're doing, so that you can actually enjoy the journey, because there's so many ups and downs. There's so many, you can have a good day and a bad day in the morning of one day. You can get good news and bad news so fast, and things change so quickly. So, it's really important that, I love that, and it looks like everyone else in the chat is loving the story too. So thank you for sharing all of that. And it's one of the reasons why we love doing these events and, building and growing our network, is because people can share these stories and they can ask questions, and they can, just be around like-minded people. So that was awesome. And Matt and Dennis, your stories were fantastic too. And thank you for sharing those. I'd love to jump over to Supriya and hear your story, because you have a fantastic story with not only working at several startups, but having a leadership role with eBay, being working on films as a filmmaker, and then starting this fund. So I'd love to hear you can go back as far as you want, but how did you come across actually getting into this? You can touch on some of the other things that I mentioned, but I'd love to just hear a little bit more about your founding story with Sparrow Ventures.
Sure. Why don't we start with the day I was born? It was the afternoon. I'm just kidding. I'll just start with like the most recent, right? How I got into venture and Sparrow, which is most relevant. After First Look Media, which I had, helped get that off the ground, I was looking for what was next. And a lot of the roles were, head of product roles at large companies, or COO roles, or CEO roles. And I realized that I was talking to VCs to look at their portfolios, and a couple of them said, "Hey, would you consider working here?" And I had seen the Omidyar network role go by, and I hadn't thought I wanted to do venture, but I said, if I'm going to consider venture, I want to consider it at an organization and for a person that I hold in very high regard. And that's Pierre Omidyar, who was the founder of eBay. And so I ended up at Omidyar Network, and Omidyar Network is Pierre's primary kind of investment vehicle. They've, over the course of its existence, has deployed about $1.5 billion, half of it in grant making to nonprofits and half of it in for-profit investing. And so I was running kind of the emerging tech organization, or the investing farm, both in the US and in India. And, it was just a great place to be, investing in mission-driven founders. But we were the only group within Omidyar Network that was doing single checkbook, right? We were only doing for-profit investing. And it just became confusing with explaining who we were, that we were venture investors and not writing grants. And so, in a discussion with Pierre, we said, we should spin out so that we could define ourselves the way we wanted to be. So in early 2018, we spun out Sparrow Ventures just to focus on the US. It's a $100 million fund, and we invest in the things that make life worth living, focused on well-being, work and purpose, and human connection. And we could have picked any thesis, but we picked that because we truly care about what we invest in. And we fundamentally believe that the best companies of our generation will marry both purpose and profit, and they're not two separate things. I look at companies like eBay or Tesla or even WhatsApp, right? Like, they fundamentally made the world better, more equitable. They've increased people's agency, access to opportunity, while also being fantastic financial returns. And so that's the kinds of company that we invest in. And we're lucky in that we have a single LP. Our single LP is Pierre Omidyar, which allows us two things. One, it allows us to have a very long-term focus. And it allows us also to have a concentrated portfolio. Concentrated portfolios are a riskier model, but it's also a model, we are high conviction investors. So we investigate a space, and then we decide to invest, and then we are with that entrepreneur. So we'll have about 20 companies in our fund, and we will engage deeply with each of our entrepreneurs, and we lead, we price, we take governance roles. So that's how we think about what we do. And, we're super grateful to be working for someone like Pierre. Now, there are many billionaires in the world, many of whom I wouldn't want to work with or for, but he's one of those who just, sees the world very long-term, fundamentally believes that human agency is so important. And, signed the Giving Pledge many years ago before it was a popular thing to do. And so, so that's how, I make it seem like it was obvious. It was obviously a complicated process, but we put our hands up. And I said, let us spin out, because we might have to hack through the jungle, but we're willing to figure out what the details are. And we think we want to define ourselves and define what we stand for and what kind of venture investing we do.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. And I totally agree with how you guys are approaching it, which is why I've been wanting to have you on one of our events for a long time now. You're one of my favorite people to follow on Twitter, and I love your blog.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
You're putting out great content all the time. You know what I mean? So, and I think how you're approaching it's fantastic, and I'm just really glad that you're a part of this. And thank you for sharing that story.
Thank you.
For sure. So the next question that I have, or I guess we can call them topics at this point, because we might get into some other things, but where do you guys see SaaS going, right? It's already been kind of, infiltrating a lot of industries. and a lot of companies. Where do you see all this going? Whoever wants to start, like, where do you think the future of this whole industry is going? And how are you kind of setting up your companies, or thinking about the future of SaaS?
Can I start? So what's happening? So back to the playbook thing. Now I'm going to just totally 180 around that. One of the things that we've seen constantly is when we first, started the company and put it out there live, we kept trying to fit into those playbooks, right? And so we'd look at other very famous companies that, were in our mode and try to do the things they were doing. And every time along the way we've done this, we've been hitting our heads against the wall, and we'd then go another way, and the other way worked. And I'll give you some examples, but it's been so interesting. Like, so now I step back first right away, and I stop trying to do it the older way. So one thing in SaaS that's changing, for example, is the SDR funnel, like that whole kind of jam where there's cold calls and cold emails and a bunch of dudes in the room and, all that whole thing. So for us, we kept trying to fit that model. I would bring in hired guns, like these guys, who'd come in. I pay them more than anyone else on my team. And then Lauren, who's on the call, there she is, who would come in from customer service and outsell them 3-to-1 because she's a nice human, right? And they were nice humans too, but she focused on the human and not the sale. And so what we then started to do was think, well, what about this cold calling? We hate receiving those calls. We hate receiving those emails. Let's stop doing that. And so we took our AI Plug for Self. So our AI literally learns what your customers want to read. So we thought, all right, I can't afford paid ads anymore either. I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to totally use my own product to create content I know my customers want to read, hear, and watch. Anybody who likes, comments, or reshares it, I'm going to consider them a warm lead. And I got this from Gary Vaynerchuk, gave me this advice, by the way. Great advice. And so they are warm leads, and we now convert them at a rate of 87%, right? And I treat each of them like an enterprise sale, whether it's small, medium, or large, because then I can turn them into evangelists. So like I'm doing a million things that investors have been telling me not to do from the beginning, and it's working. And I think it's because SaaS also has to evolve, right? If you even look at a pricing page of any of the marketing behemoths, whether it's Hootsuite or even Buffer now or HubSpot or Percolate or any of those guys, Sprinkler, if you just look at their pricing page, it feels outdated. Like something about it feels not right. Right? You can tell that the industry has to move now. Right? Anybody else feeling this? Is it just me?
For sure. Yeah. Matt, Dennis, anyone want to jump in?
I'll say two things here. I think with SaaS, like I'll reiterate a little what Kate said there. Honestly, there's a lot more move into kind of personalization side of things. I think these funnels are changing. I think especially with everyone kind of moving more online and kind of getting out of offices, like as we are right now, the relationship side is becoming more important, not less important. So we've got this whole tranche of like automate everything, automate, scale, and now we're suddenly going, okay, well, where are all the humans? And you talk about like evangelism, like Gary Vee, like Pat Flynn calls it superfans. Like, so Dave created superfans. So rather than looking at customers and going, what's the lifetime value of a customer, et cetera, like how do you create customers that just stay for life? So the lifetime value is 20, 30 years. And it used to be unheard of. Now you can start to get back towards that. So again, it's a more competitive marketplace. Any solution you pick, you're going to have 10 competitors. If you don't have them now, you'll have them in a year's time. Therefore, how do you stand out? Price points, there's pricing, there's obviously products, and then there's whether people just want to work with the company. This is vision and this is team. And so again, the more you can work to try and build like real relationships, which is hard when you're juggling at scale. Like how do you do that? Like personalization, like is the key behind this, and the companies that are doing that tend to win. I think in these competitive marketplaces, the ones that don't will most of the time get built out. Yeah, there was obviously always exceptions. The other thing I want to say is like just so not necessarily SaaS, but I think subscription. So we see this with our customer base. There's two shifts as happening. One is e-commerce. So I think subscription models in e-commerce have gone from like 11 to 17% in the last. So like it used to be like 11% of e-commerce offered subscription. It's now 17%. That's happening in like 4 months. E-commerce, like is booming. So we have a lot of customers in e-commerce. The number of customers we had in e-commerce, that percentage of our user base has doubled in the last 4 months. That market is taking off, and subscription is becoming a massive part of that. Yeah, so it's interesting seeing that model crossover. The other area it's going, I think some really interesting things in food tech as well. So what I mean here is take Misfits, who do like the ugly vegetable subscription delivery. They've raised like 74 mils. A few others is equivalent here in Australia doing it. I think again, this is probably accelerated by the times. People are starting to look at other ways to get food. So rather than going to Walmart or down to the shops, they're starting to get more home delivery. And therefore with that, they're starting to look at, okay, well, if I'm getting delivered, what are more ethical ways? What are better ways to do this? Are we buying in bulk? Are we buying monthly? And so those models, again, are starting to, like the SaaS models are starting to go into produce. And I think then again, back to the first point, is it becomes more than just about the product. It becomes about the story. And again, people try and become more ethically minded. So I think there's some really interesting shifts here. That probably kind of play across all those industries.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Matt and Kate were saying, I think SaaS is here to stay. I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of this, to be honest with you. And even if I think about this in the context of Zirtue and just, the insight that SaaS gives us versus an on-prem model in terms of how our partners are leveraging Zirtue and using the product are things that I wouldn't have the option to do in a non-SaaS world. So I'm able to actually, see that information, and our team is able to collect that information and say, okay, we thought all this time we put into feature X, Y, and Z would add all this value, but it's only being used 5% of the time, whereas these other features are being used 80+% of the time. So things like that actually give you as a business, as a SaaS company or with SaaS features, insights that you wouldn't otherwise have so that you can create a better product and a better user experience. And then I think on the flip side of that coin, to Matt's point about the subscriptions, Zirtue actually started out as a transaction-based model. So we would charge our users, the borrowers, 5% of whatever they were borrowing on the platform. So if you were borrowing $500, our service fee was $25. And what we realized after a few months, call it 6 months plus, that was a friction point for us. So we started asking users almost every month, what do you like about Zirtue? What don't you like? What features would you like to see? And one of the questions that we eventually asked was, would you prefer to pay a 5% transaction fee or $5 a month subscription fee? And over 70% said $5 a month, no question. And so we made that pivot and switched to a subscription-based model, and our user growth just took off. And so I say all that to say, that SaaS is not just doesn't just create a better user experience, it becomes a better tool for you as a business, for you as a founder, to basically leverage that information to figure out how to add more value for your business and your customers. So.
One of the things we see as an investor, as we see new models, is this combining of consumer plus enterprise. And we like to also see the mission, right? Like when you combine those three, it becomes really interesting. Because when you're designing for consumers, but also for enterprises, the quality of your product actually goes up dramatically, right? You're designing something that can compete with the best consumer apps, but that has the delegation and all of the layers that enterprise needs. And it's a draw to both. And there are the famous ones that started off with an individual bringing it into an enterprise, like Slack or Notion, right, which does both. But when you can target both or serve both well, it's a really interesting angle to go after, because you spread your you spread your user base, and they all make you better for the other. So we're seeing that trend more and more, where they will start with one, but they're willing to serve the other. And it actually helps them improve their product, improve their customer service, improve speed of rolling out of products, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think, Shapir, just to add to what you just said, one of the nuances of our application is you know, we're actually trying to do both, and it's not easy as people may think it is to try to serve both the corporate. So Zirtue is a B2B2C model, right? So we have, you know, a few different revenue streams. One's on the consumer side, the other's on the business side, and you know, we haven't pivoted to the point where we're charging our corporate partners a subscription fee. It's still a transaction-based model, whereas on the other side, on the consumer side, they're happy to pay that subscription fee. But with our corporate partners, it's a performance-based model. So you send us users, we send you money, right? And so we allow users on Zirtue to essentially borrow money to pay their bills directly through the application. So for example, AT&T was our first corporate partner. So you can borrow money on Zirtue from your friend or family member to, and once that money gets approved, it comes from your family member's account and goes directly to AT&T. Now, let's say we send AT&T $500, you know, then it's 5% that we get from that. And it doesn't happen unless we send them money. So that part of the business is still a performance-based business. And we haven't gotten to a point where we even have enough data to say, here's what we should charge you on a subscription or an annual basis yet. So.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point that you guys are bringing up because it's a win-win for everyone. It makes it easier for the consumers to not have to worry about, you know, getting however much charged per transaction or, you know, one-time thing or this or, you know, that. It sets it up, it's automated, it's recurring, they don't even have to think about it. And then for the business, it's great because you have the cash flow just coming in automatically. So I think, and that's why I love SaaS and subscriptions, because it automates everything, and it's mutually beneficial for the user experience and also for the entrepreneur, and the investors love it too. And it just creates this an amazing atmosphere. So I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else on top of this, and then we can jump on to the next topic here.
I think one more thing I'll add there, Michael, is that for me, at least from my perspective, SaaS-based solutions adds a lot of integrity to the process, right? Because people are not going to continue to pay for something that's not adding value, right? And so for me, it's a win-win-win all around. You're either providing a quality service or product, or you're not, and your users will let you know that straight away. So,
yeah.
Yeah, so that's totally true, Dennis. But then here, like I always like to look at the opposite thing. So we're always thinking about the long tail, which is Shapiro was pointing out earlier, customer, because we serve both small, medium, and large customers. And then, and what's the forget about it about? So like the Netflix amount, like I'm going to pay $12.99 or $14.99 or whatever it is, even if I don't use it. Like my gym membership is a great example. I mean, I do go to the gym every day, but a lot of people don't, and they're happy, you know, letting that $29, $49, $59 go every month. And so there's two parts of the conversation. There's the high value customer who you want to charge so much that they understand that they have to be in there every day to use it. And then there's the long tail customer who, it's just that right number, you know, and it's funny because we're talking about this a little bit like SaaS is this magical thing that you just like arrive upon. But the whole conversation about pricing and the recurring pricing, and whether it's annuals or whether it's monthly, and the kinds of customers and all that, it's a moving beast. It's like having a house. The thing is never finished. Something's always broken, right? Just so that everybody's really clear on the beast that you're about to ride.
It's a really interesting point right there with the pricing, and it's something that, as you know, like we're always thinking about, you know, and a lot of companies are like, how do you price your SaaS business? Do you just look at what's the competition that's out there, and then, you know, see what they're offering and their price points and, you know, the feature set? I wasn't planning to ask this, but I think it's a good, interesting question is, how have you guys thought about pricing with your companies? And Supriya, for any portfolio companies in SaaS too, how do you look at companies from an investor perspective as well? do you look at the price points that they're matching? Do you have any advice for other people on this?
I'll say, like, I think when thinking of pricing, remember pricing and packaging completely go together. So it's not just a price point here. If you think about it as just a price point, that's one dimension. It's probably the less important dimension. So how you package up your pricing is, I would argue, more important. So, and there's many different models here, like looking at some, you've obviously got consumption models versus you've got feature-based models, you've got mixes of both coming into play, team-based pricing versus value and feature-based pricing. That packaging is really, really important, and your business will be able to price on a number of different ways. Maybe the thing I'll add here is that as you do grow, like when you first start, you will underprice. Like I can pretty much guarantee that. So when you do that, if someone pays for it, like put it up, and don't just put it up, like double it. And then if someone pays for that, try doubling it again. I think over time, you'll obviously, what you need to do here with pricing and packaging is you need to learn very fast. And when you first start, you're going to have minimal data. So you will have to take some jumps and kind of put the dots together. And I would suggest taking bigger swings, because the bigger you get, the harder it is to take giant leaps. So try bigger swings, try packaging on, different tiers, try consumption-based pricing, try some new models that are coming out, test. And then, even as you do start to get into, building a substantial business, we test our pricing every 3 months, like as a minimum. So we will change it every 3 months. That's because we know that we're still not extracting as much value as we could do, especially when you start to talk about different tiers of users. So, we don't tend to do enterprise. The biggest tier we go to is probably 200-person companies like universities and things. So we have that, but then we also did go down to micro users. So we have this, again, we do have like quite a large scale, and trying to package such that you don't cannibalize one and that you extract maximum value from each tier is incredibly hard. And you just, even if you think you know everything about pricing, like trust me, like you will not have got it right. So just test, change, see how marketplace pricing models are moving. I spoke to one company, Biteable here, who are much bigger than us, and they said they have 186 different pricing plans because of the amount of pricing they've done over the last 4 years. And then followed up by the guy said, "I think we need to slow down a bit now." So he's like, "We never have too many." He's like, "I think we kind of get it now." So they're now like dropping back, but they're dropping back to still testing every 4 to 6 months. So they're still, but yeah, another good company that does this is Intercom. Intercom did like 14 different price points in their first year. I think they did like 17 in the second year. So pricing, do not forget packaging. It's probably more important, and double it until someone says no, and then keep testing after that.
Yeah, we got so bad at it. Sorry, Dennis. We're so bad at this that we actually just pulled pricing off altogether 5 months ago, which is like a little bit of a self-service sin. And it's working, by the way, but like because those changes are very difficult because it's not just the pricing, as Matt is saying, it's in the packaging, and for us, it's also inside the product. And it was just like this cascade of work. And honestly, you learn in the first week, right? You learn right away, sometimes in the first 3 days, whether you've mucked it up or not. And you're like, oh my God, I got to go through all this work again. Right, Dennis?
No, that's exactly right, Kate. I think you're spot on. And Matt, I think what you're saying is right as well. I have not figured out the pricing model, how to crack that code. I'm going to be honest. And it's one of those things that seems to be a moving target, to be honest with you. In fact, there are people out there, their full-time job in life is to help you find the right pricing model. We haven't engaged any of those people yet, but we are looking at engaging some people on the psychology side from a user standpoint to understand how users make decisions, whether it be emotional or personal or otherwise, when they go through the systems and all that stuff, or go through the application. And so, there's a perceived value thing that seems to change over time. And so, Matt, when you say you look at your model every 3 months, that's not surprising. It sounds a little excessive to someone who hasn't gone through this, but the macro and micro themes shift, and customers' perception changes over time. So you have to revisit your pricing model. I think for us, because we're such a new sort of way of doing things, we didn't have anyone to compare our pricing model to. So when we were charging our corporate partners 5%, we had to look at adjacent services like credit card transaction fees and things like that, which are 2.5, roughly 3%. And we said, okay, we could probably get away with a premium of about 5%, because it's easier to lower your price than it is to raise it. And so far that's working out for us. But as we scale, we'll see how well that holds up. But I don't have a clear answer on the pricing model, to be honest with you.
And I'm really glad I brought this topic up because it's so hilarious. I mean, you guys have all raised millions of dollars. You have large companies. You have, tons of revenue coming in, and you're still experimenting and figuring out your pricing model. So I think it's so important for earlier stage entrepreneurs to understand that. So thank you guys all for that. Shapira, it looks like you want to.
Yeah, I will say that even later stage companies, there is no right answer. And Matt kind of hit the nail on the head, right, with testing. That's all you can do, and keep testing. We had a subscription-based company that almost doubled their price, and they're like, people are staying. And it was complete shock, right? Even like the VCs were like, I don't know, that feels a little extreme. We don't know if you should go there, and it worked, right? So like, there is no, like, it's really the hard thing, right? When you're in a company, you're like, our companies would be like, okay, so what should we price it at? And you're like, you gotta test your way into that. There is no one answer. And the other thing is also it's mix, right? If you have different kinds of users, what is the period that you allow people to use it for free before you start charging them? What's the weekly, the monthly versus the annual? And, like, be bold with those things, right? Like, try one versus the other, try to move more people towards annual. I mean, the value of annual is just, it's gold, right? Because like your churn is just completely different when you have people who are willing to sign up for an annual contract. So besides pricing, like in that whole area is just so much testing to be done that there's testing between like messages. How do you get people to convert? Like, what's your free trial period? What do you say to like get people to pick annual? It's a very rich vein. And I wish there was a SaaS company that enabled all of you to figure it out, right? Because that would be, and if any of you are building that, please reach out. Because that, like, imagine if you just said, here are my parameters and go run this test for us. Come back to me in like 2 months and tell me what I should do. I'd fund that company, and I think all of you would use that company. But
Sure.
yeah, it's
like on that note, what I found to be really valuable is metaphors from companies that are nothing like ours. So like not looking at other marketing companies, looking at just when I see a company doing something cool, my first thought is, how can I steal from that? How can I appropriate that to us in some way? And so in one way, by the way, which I just wanted to share with everybody, because I love, Matt was hitting on the packaging part, which is not exactly this idea, but it'll get your brain thinking. Have you guys ever heard the Betty Crocker story? What happened with that? Like, so we have powdered cake in a box, right? This is what it is. Everybody knows. And you add 2 eggs. That's not how it was in the beginning. They already had the powdered eggs in there. And the housewives at the time, because that's the deal, was like, yee, that seems kind of creepy. So they made it so you had to actually put eggs in, and then the thing sold, right? So the metaphor I took away from that was that's how we started to sell our robot, our AI plus humans. We knew that if we could sell it as the human took it to that baked cake, right, from more than just a powder, then that would work for us. And that's how Lauren and Ankit do their sales pitches. Right? They've learned that human element has to be part of the sale.
I think that's a great, and go ahead.
No, I was just going to say to Kate, that's an interesting model because most SaaS solutions don't take a high touch approach. It sounds like you guys have sort of made a business decision that you're going to go and take a high touch approach when most SaaS companies are looking just for those economies of scale and growing, and if they never talk to a customer or see a user, they're extremely happy with that. So I think that's an interesting and differentiator for you guys.
And Dennis, by the way, I want everybody to know this. Like, so this is, I wrote this on social recently. This is my favorite thing in the world. I say, or they say, you're doing it wrong. And I say, but it's working.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Anything you can do, especially when you first start, do whatever you have to do to get a customer. Like just forget scale, like throw out the window, stop trying to do growth hacks. If you have to get on the phone to a customer for 2 hours and it's worth $15, do it because it's all proof points and you'll get better at it over time. Like work out what it takes. And if it needs a relationship like touch point, but that customer stays with you for 5 years, like do the maths. Like I'm pretty sure it pays off for those 2 hours of calls every time.
Yeah.
Scale that.
I think these are all fantastic points. And we just had a question come in as well that I think is very relevant for what we're talking about right now is what if you do the change in the pricing model and everyone is up in arms and hates it and customers are reaching out to support and everyone's trying to, stop their subscriptions and asking for refunds or why are you doing this? Can't I have the old pricing? Have you guys run into any issues like this or have you heard of any stories like this and how have you dealt with those?
So it's not a pricing problem, it's a product problem. Sorry, Matt, right? Like, I mean, if everybody's saying that, your product is fucked. You need to rethink that.
I was going to say that, like maybe some advice on how to conduct pricing tests because maybe that's so here's the thing: if you're doing price test, you're not going in and just changing thousands of customers' pricing like that night without telling anyone. Like, right. Do not do that. That's a bad move. The other thing about pricing tests, so try and do them like you would do anything in the company with minimum input. So one of the ways you can pricing test people is you can email them and say, hey, we try out something. Email 10 customers, try something, see if they buy. You don't have to go and change it even online. When we do pricing tests, we tend to just change it with new signups. So we don't touch our existing users. We change it for new people coming in. Because what we want to see is, because our existing users are already biased. So can we get new users in their first 14 days trial? Can we get a high percentage to upgrade? Can we get more than spend? And then, you will have, the other things here, you have like lagging and leading indicators where, you can't predict churn. Like you have to wait a few months for that to come through and see if it has made a difference. But do it with new customers coming in. Like the ideal scenario is A/B testing. If you're an early stage company, that's probably not going to happen because that's quite complex and hard to do. And your numbers just aren't big enough to show you the difference. So do it with new users. Warn your users if you're doing it. The other thing is once you've got an indication something's going to work, grandfather customers. So give them a grace period. So give them 6-12 months to stay on their existing pricing. And then maybe at the end of that, still give them a discount of 10% on the new pricing if it's that much higher. Show you care. The last point is, I will tell you, people will complain, but if they don't quit, and this is not like in an immoral way, because as you go from a little tiny product to a massive system with like lots of customers, and the value it provides is 100 times like bigger, as it will do because it'll grow. It's fine to charge more for that. So as you go and grow and need to charge more, you may find that some of your small customers move away, but you're moving to large customers anyway. People may complain, but they'll keep paying it. And that means that obviously the value is still there for them at that new price point. But again, be nice, give them discounts, thank them for being with you. Don't just ostracize customers. And the likelihood of that happening, that everyone comes in, everyone quits. I know it seems like it could happen. It just doesn't. I know companies who've doubled their pricing and they've had like 1% of customers leave. And every single person they've told them in research, because you do research with customers, if we double pricing, is that okay? Everyone's like, no, we'll never pay that. And then it comes to the crunch and they all do. So don't rely on questioning your existing users. So there's a lot of.
Yeah.
I think, go ahead, Dennis. Sure.
No, I was just going to add to what Matt and Kate just called out, which is, I do think it's important to not just do things arbitrarily or in a vacuum and just roll out a price increase. I think that's bananas and just batshit crazy in general, because why would you create that kind of issue for yourself, right? And obviously, if you start losing customers, all of a sudden you have to now, call that back and take it out back and kill it and all that stuff. And I just think that's a bad PR move. But also on the flip side of that coin, if you ask or survey your users and say, hey, are you okay with this price increase? 90% of them are going to say no. Okay. But if you slowly roll it out, to Matt's point, grandfather people in and look at what your conversion rate is compared to what it was before, you know, that's your real test, because I think that'll be something a lot less than 90%. You'll probably get an opportunity to keep 80% of those people that would have answered, I don't want you to raise your price on a survey. So I think you have to balance, you know, asking customers what they want versus exposing them to what you know, think they may react in a different way to. So I do think there's a little bit of that here.
Yeah, and two, Dennis, like I want to add on to that to say that like there's 2 points. Number one, it's very easy to justify pricing. You just have to justify it. So you have to say, hey, the product that you're using, we've actually improved it, you know, by adding these 6 new features since we last charged you for it, you know, whatever. So people are reasonable. They understand that. It's actually pretty easy to send that email and say, here's why we're changing the pricing, you know, whatever. And then one note to be careful about the grandfathers, because we've made this mistake. Don't grandfather people for life, because shit's going to change.
That's right. That's right. No, that's absolutely right. And I think to your point, Kate, about, you know, the over communication. Hey, here's what's changing. Here's why it's changing. We're adding new features, functionality. You're going to love it. But I think there's a way to even do that. It's, you know, nothing's going to change about your price, your services you have today. But if you like to upgrade, you know, here's your opportunity to do that and just create another tier of packaging. So, yeah, I like that idea.
And ultimately, like, pricing is about revenue. So if you lose 10% of your customers, but the other 90% pay you double, then you just increased your revenue by 1.8%. So yeah, like it's about ultimate revenue in the bank, and the 10% that you lose are probably your worst customers. So they probably cause you the most support issues, etc. And as you start to raise pricing, those customers that are less price sensitive, I can guarantee will be your better customers anyway. So again,
well, yeah. Well, you know what? To that point, Matt, I've actually seen companies weaponize their pricing as an excuse to fire customers and users they don't want. So
100%.
We do that. Shh, don't tell my customers, but we do that.
There you go. Yeah.
Zirtue, do you want to add anything onto this? Because I know
it's such great points, right? I would look at pricing changes as an opportunity. What can you do to convert monthlies to annual? What can you do to, you know, like get them to commit longer? What can you do to show the value you're doing? I mean, you roll out a big new set of products, right? A big new suite. And we're like, hey, we're adding all of this stuff and it's only $2 more. So I think it's an opportunity versus a thing to fear. Because you always bundle it with something. You always try to get customers to use your product more. And to commit to you more. So yeah, but I think Matt, Dennis, and Kate covered just almost all the points really well. So
yeah.
And also, what I wanted to just note, what Shripriya just did there. How did I say your name? Shripriya?
You said it right the second time, Shripriya.
I got it. All right. Is marketing, and I'm not just saying this because that's my jam, but my friend Jill Soley wrote a great book. It's called Beyond Product, and it's this idea, which is true, that marketing is the one business aspect that bleeds across product, sales, customer service, HR, accounting, engineering, believe it or not, right? And so when she just said that, we're adding this much more, but only for this many more dollars, that spin is what that is, right? And so how you communicate the pricing change or anything else, and it has to be consistent across, you know, all of your messaging, whether it's inside the product and how you're messaging the pricing change there, or whether it's through a direct email, or whether it's the pricing page on your site, right? It's all tied in by the marketing. Sorry, Michael.
No, you're good. No, I loved this because you guys made so many fantastic points, and I wasn't expecting to really get on the pricing topic too long, but I think, you know, the more and more that we talked about it, the more and more it's very apparent that this is extremely important for many companies, but especially SaaS companies, and it's something that people should always be thinking about. So I'm really glad that we brought it up. And we're going to get into next. We have a couple, like, really it's just, we have some tips and strategies that I want to get into for founders that you guys would recommend. Current market conditions with everything going on with COVID, and then we'll get into Q&A. So all the people watching, if you want to start thinking about questions, just message me directly on the chat, or you can throw them out in the main chat as well. But I'd love to have everyone quickly go around and share maybe things that they, one or two things that they wish they would have known when they were starting out as an entrepreneur, or some strategies for scaling and growing your businesses. I know we hinted on some of these, but if you guys want to throw in any others that you've kind of learned over the years, and things that you would do differently if you were starting a new company today, or like back then, what you wish you knew.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get it started here. I think for me, so for my last company I had, I later sold that company. One of the mistakes that I made was raising money. Two mistakes. I actually made 1,000, but I'm going to talk about two. Raising money too soon and selling that company too soon, and as well. So it was a decent exit, but it wasn't like an over the top one. And it actually had the potential to do a lot more had I invested a lot more in myself up front and in the business up front versus taking on that capital. And so what I would advise any entrepreneur, whether it be first time or otherwise, to do is make sure you invest in yourself before you ask others to invest in yourself and to invest in you. And on the other side of that is go out and make sure you have a real company too before you go raise $1. So what we've done with Zirtue is we put pretty much a lot of our own money into it. Went out and actually had users, had paying companies, customers, partners, etc., before we raised $1. And so it's important to at least show some type of interest, if not a complete market fit for your product, before you go out and raise money, because on the back end of that, you're going to give up a lot of equity that you could have otherwise held on to. And I also think it just makes the conversations with investors that much more easier as well. So that would be my 2 cents.
I'll jump in next then. So a bit different, I'd say team. So I think this is one of the things that we all take for granted. And to get good at building a team, I'd say we're starting to get good now. I think like any new company, you'll obviously have the founders, and you're both pretty committed. Your early team members, you'll find them through friends and through just serendipity, and they're normally pretty good, yeah. But as you start to grow, that team will have to grow with the company, and you start to obviously get people into better roles. I think we took that approach to hiring people we knew and we kind of came across probably a little bit too far. And we also probably didn't push outside of Australia quick enough. So we're now, like, most of our team are not where the founding team is. I kind of wish we'd done that on day one, because it's made us be able to grow a lot faster, a lot more operationally efficient. We found the best people for the roles. And we really started to focus on roles. We now do the whole 4 or 5 interviews before we hire someone. We really go there. We've had to let a couple of team members go. They were perfect for the team when there was 3 or 4 of us, 5 of us, but they're not perfect for the team at the size that it is now. And you get to these points where you probably know in your heart whether you will grow somebody or need to replace them, and you always go too long before you make that decision. I found. So I think this is some of the stuff that is, you will all hit this. If you grow a team and grow a company, you're gonna have to make some hard decisions around team members, and your gut is normally right here. So just be prepared for that. Be prepared to not let things drag on. And I think don't underestimate the importance, because honestly, the business, it's all about the team. It's not about the product. It's not about pricing. It's not about any of that. If you have the right team, they will solve all those challenges. Like they will solve every single challenge for you. You'll be able to create an amazing business. And obviously large companies get this. And when you start, you kind of wing it and you have an awesome, passionate team at the beginning. And then you hit a point when you suddenly realize the big guys are actually right in the way that they take so much time on hiring.
Yeah, so amazing. And you just gave me such a good segue, Matt and Dennis. So for me, if someone said, you know, what would I have like thought about different, or first thing is how much money I was going to spend on eye cream. I didn't know how many sleepless nights I would have. And I've spent a lot of money on my face in the last 5 years, that's for sure, because I'm vain. But the other thing was that I learned, and it's thanks to my team, was how much credit I was not giving myself along the way. And I'll give you an example. So about 19 months ago, I had raised $2 million in New York City. I'd raised almost $3 million before that. So this was going to be a new round for us. And I couldn't find a lead. And I was banging my head against the wall, and I really couldn't figure out why. And this is when that whole thing around female entrepreneurs having to work 98% harder than our male counterparts came out. And I was like, I couldn't even believe that was part of the deal. But I had other investors who were my investors telling me, like, this is what's happening. And I was like, all right. Well, so I had no choice. I pulled our burn down from 100K to 10K, which is where it is still, which means that 95% of my team hasn't been paid by me full time in 19 months, right? And they're not going anywhere. And then actually 4 months ago or 5 months ago, whenever COVID hit, now I can't remember because the whole summer is like weird. I had $4 million circled for a $2.5 million round. I had a term sheet in hand, others promised, and the world exploded. And I don't break very often, but like I broke, I cried for like 2 weeks, and I just was so tired. And I was able to literally go and be paralyzed and eat nachos on the couch for a while because Lauren, my teammate, could run the company. And she was willing to do that, right? My team, who I'm not paying, was willing to come in and just lift me up because I couldn't even do it myself, right? And so the thing that as I'm telling you this, and by the way, that year that went when no one's been paid, I doubled sales. I brought in AB InBev and SAP. I landed Gary Vaynerchuk. I landed Jason Calacanis, right? So I was not able to say these things I just said to you until a few months ago when I heard my co-founder, Steve, telling someone else this. And I didn't even know I had done these things and that they were worthwhile, right? Because you're in that autopilot. And so that's the one thing that if I had known that, because this is what is more male, it's a natural thing for you to own your money, right? And if I had known that, I know that I would have been able to close deals better and faster if I was able to tout my own successes, at least in some way. So it's a painful lesson for me that I'm still learning.
Now, I would say like who you partner with at every stage, whether it's the people you work with or your investors, really matters. And I think second-time entrepreneurs understand this a lot better than first-time entrepreneurs, right? Because, and this could be viewed as self-serving, but like there's a lot of money in the Valley right now. There's a lot of money in investing right now, right? So there's no, like, could you go raise a round? Yeah, the likelihood's really high you could raise a round, especially if you have a product. And you could raise a round on a crazy multiple, right, in certain spaces. But, no one is telling you that your next round, you've just made your next round very hard. No one's telling you that if you raise a round at this valuation, at some point the rubber meets the road, right? You can't always get credit for growth. And so, at some point, it converges to some sort of rationality, not 200x and not 50x, not 60x, right? Like that, those are not public market comps. And so, yeah, when you're a baby company, sure, but those things don't last. And you need to pick people who are going to be there for you, right? It's a roller coaster, regardless of whether you think everyone believes it's going to be up and to the right. Okay, especially when you do a round, because you're raising money. How could it not be up and to the right? Someone believes in you, but it's never up and to the right. It's always a roller coaster. Even the super hot companies, things happen, like I remember we had a company in our portfolio. We still have the company in our portfolio where it was 3 a.m. his time. I happened to be in Asia, and he's like, okay, so this term sheet that was coming tomorrow, like the chairman of the corporate VC fund that was funding it was like, has more questions and they may have to pull it. What do you do, right? And so there are investors who will freak out because it's no longer hot or it's hit a road bump. And there are investors who will figure out how to get you through that and get you to, give you a bridge to pay salaries, get you to the other side of that so that you can continue existing. And those are the questions you really need to ask, right? Because money is very fungible, but your investors are not that fungible. So spend the time to do the research to figure out what you're getting besides money. And and some of these things are just hard to figure out, right? So you have to talk to other entrepreneurs that they've backed. Talk to entrepreneurs who've failed, right? Who've lost their money, who have returned their money, because it's easy to be a great investor when everything is going well. But it really counts when things are not going well. How do you treat people who are not going to return your money? Do you treat them differently? Hopefully not, right? But that's not always the case.
Yeah, like on that note, when I was down in the dubs the first time I failed in my mind, I had some of my male investors literally tell me that I'd be better off letting my male co-founder raise money for me. And I was like, I'm actually really good. I raised $3 million. You know how hard that was to do? I'm good at this. And it pissed me off so much to this day. I don't talk to those guys because I'm just like, can't even believe that they would adjust that.
Yeah, I think, Kate, to your point, and that's sad to hear. Shapira, I think great advice, by the way, because one of the things that I didn't know early on, at least in my first business, was that it was equally important for me to be interviewing the investor as it was for them to be interviewing me. And I was just looking for money. Anyone who would give me money, literally, I would take it. And that was a mistake number 22, right? So it's really important to make sure that your interests are aligned with their interests and vice versa. Because when things do go wrong, and they will, you want to make sure that they have your interest in mind in every sense of the word, right? I mean, they're genuinely out not just to protect their investment, but they want to see you be successful. And it's not about anything else, And I think, Kate, you mentioned this early on, when investors invest, they're investing 100% in you as a person. And so the thought process is, well, if you're investing in me, and if you believe that I'm the person to execute on this, if and when we do hit a wall, my expectation is that you'll jump in with your sleeves rolled up and we'll figure this thing out and we'll get through that and we'll celebrate later. But not all investors are that way. In fact, there are a lot of investors who should not be investors, right? They're just, happen to have access to capital and they need something to do. So I have a lot of opinions about investors, very similar to lawyers, but we could talk about that another day. So I'll leave it at that.
It is hard though. Like, again, for those new founders here, like we're all saying this, having been through the grinder and the washing machine and seeing things, like it is really hard. But I think, like we said earlier, just there is more than one person who will give you money. If you've only talked to 10 people and one person offers you funds, then go and talk to 100, and you should get 10 people who offer you funds, and then you have a choice. Just go out there and talk to more people, and that's it. Get a choice. It also, of course, if you have a choice, it helps you negotiate as well. So there's other benefits, but pick someone who, as everyone has said, when the going gets tough, will put their hand in their pocket and kind of back you guys to go further.
I love this advice, and I think it's something that I'm learning a lot as well. And it's one of the reasons why our logo is, the N is part of our name, but it symbolizes the ups and downs of entrepreneurship too. So it's so critical to have the right people on board with your team, like you guys were mentioning, and then also from the investor side, it's really critical to have people that are aligned with what you're really doing over the long term, other than just obviously everyone wants to make money and turn a profit and be successful, but it's you want people in your corner that are going to stand up for you and be a part of what you're doing. So I love all of this. And I'm glad, because it seems like everyone's really like on the same page with all of this, which is really cool to see as well.
You know what, too, Michael, on that note, we've found that at least at our stage, like the investors who we jibe with the most have been entrepreneurs themselves, because they know.
Yeah, and that's what for what we're doing. It's one of the reasons why I really only want investors who are entrepreneurs, because our whole company is based around entrepreneurship and the future of work. And if they were never an entrepreneur, they're not going to understand the pain points that we're solving. I think it's another thing that I've really learned is find investors who are in your industry, who have been in there, because they're going to understand what you're doing. If you're talking to just investors for the sake of talking to investors, they're not going to understand maybe even what you're doing, because they're not in that industry that you're doing. So I think it's another big thing that I've learned a lot, and it's a common thread that I've seen, interviewing investors and founders too. I know we're coming up on time here, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and this has been a fantastic discussion. So I just want to throw out, obviously, like, this point in time is pretty wild, right? With everything going on, this is going to be in the history books. Like, we're living in like a time period that everyone's going to remember and think back to. So, given the current situation, do you guys have any, thoughts, advice? Like, what are you guys seeing in the current state of things, either from, obviously this is about SaaS, business itself, the industry. Obviously technology is doing incredibly well. I'm assuming most of, SaaS companies are doing well, like with everything going on. So does anyone have any thoughts, advice, I guess any recommendations on what people should be doing right now, given the current situation, or if anyone has any thoughts on what's happening right now and wanting to share?
I would say two things. One, if you're struggling, the most important thing is just getting to the other side of this, which may be a year from now, right? But just figure out how to get yourself to the other side. If you're struggling and you need to raise, but you're not having much success. But if you're doing well, and things are going well and you're hitting your metrics, you should go raise right now. Because the shocking thing that I'm seeing right now, which is not what I expected, it's not what we told our LP. We wrote them this very thoughtful letter on what's going to happen to valuations. Completely wrong. But, we are seeing crazy valuations. We are seeing preemptive rounds. We are seeing just insanity, right? And you know what? It's going to work in your favor. Don't do something totally insane, right? I do not recommend the 50x and the 100x, because if you need to raise money again, what's going to happen, right? But if you have real traction, if you have real revenue, if you have a great story to tell, go tell that story. Because investors are looking for a trustworthy, right now they're investing without meeting you, right? So if you're trustworthy, and if they can buy into your story, you're going to raise if they believe in what you're building. So, that's just my short version of, depending on where you are. And you could be either, and there's nothing good or bad about either. The key is surviving and building a long-term company that you're proud of, right? That makes a massive impact on the world. So it doesn't matter whether you're on the upside or the downside. You just need to, just keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would just add to what Shapir said is, but actually a comment first. And to your point, Shapir, I don't think most founders, new or otherwise, understand the downstream impacts of raising too much money too soon. I don't think that logically hits their or I don't even think they run the numbers on that, to be honest with you. And so a lot of them do end up upside down because they took on too much too soon. And that can be bad, especially if you burn through that money at a rate, you know, that is not healthy. And all of a sudden you're going back out to the market trying to raise money, and you're trying to figure out, hey, I just raised all this money at 50x. Why is no one giving me money? Well, there's nothing there, and you would have to give me your company for me to give you money. And so I think that's something that, just from an advice standpoint, I think that's spot on. People should get to know and understand the business, especially if you're approaching investors, you know, going back to the points made earlier, if they're not operators, if they're purely financial engineers, they're just going to figure out a way to, you know, have you coming back begging for more, which is what they do. So I think that's fine. But Michael, going back to your question about COVID, I do think, I don't know if it'll be next year, but certainly this year, I think it's a write-off for most people, personally and professionally. So I think you should be trying to do whatever you can this year, the rest of this year, to put yourself in a position to be successful next year, whatever that is, right? So if you're looking to start a business, start working on that very aggressively now, you know, because personally, I would not trust companies at this stage, right? Because a lot of companies are laying off, which is partly why I'm an entrepreneur. I don't think there's any loyalty in corporate America. So if I had to choose between being an entrepreneur and being employed, I choose being an entrepreneur any day. I'd rather put, you know, my faith in myself and fail versus working for a company, putting in 15, 20 years and get laid off. To me, that doesn't sound attractive. You know, but everyone has a different risk profile. But I would say spend this year trying to build whatever it is you're going to be successful at in 2021. So
I want to add to that too, which is, so I don't know if you guys can see this sticky note, but what it says is fresh start. And I had to have one of my investors who loves me remind me of this, because I told you guys my grinder story, right? And that grinder story has been working for me as leverage with investors for a long time now. And guess when it doesn't work anymore? When the whole world is grinding. So I don't tell that story in pitches right now because nobody cares. Everybody's grinding, right? I have another story that I use, and it's always about the story. So that fresh start, like you can sweep anything under the rug. And I'll give you guys a really good example. So when COVID hit, we released a feature that like blew some minds, and it changed a lot for us. And I don't know if Spiro has seen this feature, so I should call Ha and show her this. But it's Gary Vee launched an entire Twitter channel based on this feature that I had, and we were able to increase our sales 72% in the last 6 months, no matter of COVID. But there were a few pauses of things, and then I took the time to go back and actually Lauren did. We went through all of our past accounts and kind of cleaned up and figured out what Stripe was screwing up between check paying and like all of our accounting. And the bad news is it dropped my MRR $10,000 than what I thought I had from the dawn of time, not just now. So suddenly, like I was like, how am I going to start communicating this new number, which makes it sound like I didn't do anything. So what I did was I put it all in March. I just dumped all the mistakes into March, and now I can be like, COVID, and nobody cares, right? So like it helped me have that fresh start, and that's something you guys should think about as well, right? It's just a great write-off, which is I think what Dennis had said.
Like you've covered a lot of what I was going to say, so I'll take a different route. I think so to be honest, being video, it's not a bad place to be right now, which is where we are. So I think the final learning I had is that despite that, there's a lot of background fatigue on team. And so let's say we have a team in the Philippines who've been having military lockdowns, team in London who are in tiny apartments, who have been locked in for 2 weeks without any fresh air, team in Melbourne who thought it was all over and now they're all back in again. And so you see all these swings. And so I think one of the important things is, you know, if it's just you, or if it's you, the co-founder, or it's you and the team, be very conscious of that and like encourage everyone to take breaks. Like I was chatting to my team the other day, and they were saying, like, it's hard right now because, you know, obviously the world's melting down and we've got to work harder than ever. And I was like, no, you just have to work as hard as you were working last year. You don't have to work any harder. They take, and so like the last kind of month, I've been like, everyone who hasn't taken holidays because they're in lockdown, I'm like, look, if you could do it, take the time. Just turn our Slack off, turn our email off, turn everything off. Do not talk to us for a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is you need. Go and see family. Like, we don't care. We're remote workers anyway, so it doesn't matter. Be very aware of that fatigue, no matter if people are doing good or bad. It is there. It is there in families. It is there in knock-on effects. It is there because of the stress of the news. So encourage your team to stay mentally healthy. Do what it takes. In lockdown, you kind of work harder because no one leaves the house. I was like, when people on Slack 24/7, I'm like, turn it off. The company will not melt down. It'll be fine. If you take a break and come back refreshed tomorrow, I will get better work out of you 100%. So don't give me 16 hours of mediocrity. Give me 6 hours of like high productive, excellent work any day. So yeah, I just think just be aware of it. No matter how good people are doing, it's very important. And work as hard as you've done any year. You don't need to work harder, I don't think.
Yeah, I think
One thing
Matt, you just said it.
okay.
Sorry, Matt, you just said it so well, right? Like, human beings and human lives are like the primary thing. They're more valuable than any company or losing money, right? And that's just like blanket. And we lose sight of this sometimes. We're not curing cancer. Some startups are. We're not like surgeons. No one's going to die if something happens, if you lose a customer or your MRR goes down. I made one of our CEOs take a week off and nothing happened. The person is way better now than they were before that break, just way more energized. And to Matt's point, that, nothing happened to the company, right? Others stepped up, they did their job. To Kate's point before, her colleague did that. And so, we treat our companies like it's life and death, and it's really not. Yes, it's precious, and yes, it's valuable. But, we care for the human beings our entrepreneurs are way more than we care for the entity that the company is, because, one is just infinitely more valuable than the other. And you need the CEO and the founders to be physically, mentally healthy, to be able to achieve anything, to be able to want to work. So I think Matt said it really well.
Yeah, to also add to that note, with us, I did two things. So first of all, when COVID first hit, there was this whole thing around LinkedIn and Slack to just everybody offer free services and don't sell. And I told my team, we're not for free. We're not for free. We're selling. There's no shame in selling during a pandemic or any other time. Like, everybody still has to have money. So number one, not that you shouldn't lift other people up and, be gracious and kind and all those things. But the other thing I did was I made our Slack channel a safe place. And I literally said to these guys, I was like, there's so many stories that are heart attack stories happening all over. They're not going in our Slack channel. Like, Slack is a safe place. Lately is a safe place for you guys to get away from that stuff. And if you have something that's crazy going on, you're totally stressed about it, someone who has COVID, one of my employees had COVID. I was like, come and tell me, I will take that stress for you guys. But like, our place is not, not going to be the zone for the chaos. We have enough, right?
I love all of this. And I think, founder mental health is such a critical thing. And it's something that we're really focused on. One of the key things that we're, helping to, hopefully solve, or at least help with, just bringing people together and making it less lonely as entrepreneurs. And, I was actually talking to another founder friend earlier today about kind of this too, is, you can work extremely hard at whatever it is, but if you're not putting good energy into that, it's fruitless. All of your effort, it means nothing, because you're putting bad energy into that. So there's no way that that's ever gonna, work out. So it's better to, just recharge or whatever you need to do to feel good, and then be in a state where you can put good energy into the work that you're doing. And I think it's such it's so critical. It's so hard to do because there's just things that you have to do as a founder. But, I try to check in with myself and, help other people do that as much as possible, throughout, the days and weeks and months. And, right now it's also tough because everyone's just stuck in their own place. They can't even interact with other people. So it's even harder right now than ever, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's sort of been medicine for me during this COVID thing is really doubling down and caring about, in terms of caring about something outside of myself, and really trying to help other people. And if nothing else, just reaching out. And, because what I've noticed is that during this time period, people that, because we've all been sheltering in place, there are a lot of people that don't have that human interaction. We go back to human, there is a big human part of this, but there are just people that cross my mind from time to time. And instead of me just ignoring that thought, I'll actually reach out to them, call them, or say, hey, let's jump on a Zoom call or something. And, just ask them how they're doing. I think something as small as that actually goes a long ways in terms of helping people get through this. Because everyone's dealing with something, and we don't know how heavy that may be, but I do think it's important to care about something outside of yourself. So.
Yeah, and also, by the way, there's no shame in using that as a sales tactic as well. Like, I mean, we the human idea.
Good idea.
I mean, I did encourage my team to do that, but we do that normally. I mean, so that's the other thing is somebody had asked us like, well, now that the world is falling apart, what have you changed with your business? And like, the honest answer is not much, because if you don't act as though you care about what your customers care about, then you're not going to succeed anyways, right? That's got to be my number one job, is to care about what you think and build you the product that you're going to be delighted by and all that kind of stuff. And so what it's helped us do is tie these messages together. So there's the AI plus the human. There's the human to human in our messaging and on the way we treat our employees, the internal culture, right? The human element, how we help our customers. And we created a Slack channel for our customers, and one of the, or account, one of the channels we have is called Sharing is Caring. And we encourage them to pop in social awesomeness of things that they've achieved so other people can share it, or we'll find them. We'll find somebody like released a book, so we'll pop in the LinkedIn post about that. Just those little things, which again, it goes to churn prevention, it goes to sales, it just goes to being, not only caring about yourself, seemingly at least, all that.
Yeah, I think I love all of these final thoughts here. I feel like we could keep going for probably a couple hours with this group. This has been awesome. And to wrap things up here, I'd love to have you everyone can share, what's the best place to find them? How can they follow you, continue learning more about what you're doing, and just, keep the communication lines open. If there's anything that you're looking for, if anyone's hiring, if anyone's looking for particular intros, or whatever, now would be a great time to share those. And then we can wrap up here, because I know we're a little bit over time, and I just want to be respectful of everyone I know. Matt's kind of just starting his day here, so he's probably got a lot of other stuff to do in Australia, and I know it's kind of getting late here in the US as well. So whoever wants to, share their final thoughts.
I'll go. This was a great panel. I was really, thank you, Michael, for having me. It was great to be on the panel with Matt and Dennis and Kate. And I'd say, I'm on Twitter. It's the best way to reach me, Shripriya, which is just my first name. It's also my email address, shripriya@sparrow.vc. And if I can help in any way, please do feel free to reach out.
Okay.
All right, I'll go. I'm still alive. Yeah, LinkedIn is the place to get me. So if you go to LinkedIn, type in Papa Bear. I'm pretty sure there's like 2 of us, and I'm the guy in the bear suit, so you should be able to find me pretty easy. Like, do we chat? Like, if you have any questions, like, please chat. Let me know. I was extremely cheeky when I first got started, and I still am. So I hound people for questions all the time. Most of you probably won't hit me up, but if you are the brave ones that do, like my time is yours.
Yep, I'll go ahead and go. We'll save the best for last with Kate. So the best way to reach me is probably on LinkedIn. I do spend quite a bit of time on that, more so than I do the other social media platforms. So I'll post that here if Michael hasn't already done so. And you can always email me as well at dcail@zirtue.com. Happy to help. Happy to have you guys use me as a sounding board. And certainly if you're looking to quit your job and start a company, I'm all in on that. So let me know what you need. So.
You're hilarious. So thanks, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm Lately AI Kately, I think, on Twitter. Maybe it's Kately Lately AI. I can't remember. We just changed it, but you can find me. Just like Kately from Lately. I'm everywhere. My thoughts I want to leave you with is do what Michael has done today. I try to do this once a day. Lift somebody up in one way or the other, whether it's sharing their content online or making an intro. Or just smiling and saying happy Thursday or Wednesday or whatever day it is. Doesn't really matter. But that smile goes a long way. And thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, this was fantastic. And I love that final piece of advice. I think it's a great place to wrap up. And thank you, everyone who stuck around. I know everyone, we had people jumping on and off throughout this just because people are at home and probably have kids running around or making dinner and all sorts of stuff. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This will be, the replay will be up hopefully tomorrow or later. We'll send the video out if any of you guys want to, put it out on social or whatever. And definitely I encourage everyone to follow up. And, these are fantastic people to know in the startup ecosystem. And, really appreciate everyone being a part of this. And I look forward to hopefully doing one of these in person at some point. That's what we're doing it across many different cities and stuff. And we still really think that the human connection is so important. So we want to get back to it eventually, just like, who knows when. So maybe we'll be able to sit down and do this in person sometime in the future as well. But I really appreciate all of you being a part of this and spending your time, which I know is really valuable. And take care. Have a great night. Everyone who joined, watching from all around, thank you. And if there's anything that we can do to help you, feel free to reach out. I just dropped everyone's LinkedIn and website on there, including my own. If there's anything that we can do to help you, just feel free to let us know. And jump into what we're doing in our community at joinentre.com. And that's it. Everyone have a great night. Thank you so much. This was awesome.